How are you? Ryan Taylor. Yes, that's what I said. The jury has some, because I've been involved. I wrote to Taylor this yesterday. It's also
Good to see you too.
they're doing a lot.
Hello, everybody. People are gonna get started. You all know me, but I'm Margot Levin, and I am honored to introduce Ronit to our community. It's the first time she's in Redding. Ronit Treatman is the director of Reconectar. She was born in Israel and grew up in Ethiopia and Venezuela. After serving in the Israel Defense Forces Foreign Liaison Division, she studied international business administration in the United States. She was a stay-at-home mom of 3 children for 10 years, residing in Philadelphia. When her youngest child started school, she became a writer, editor, and ultimately president of the Philadelphia Jewish Voice. During this period, she also created the blog and website Hands on Jewish Holidays, and administered many social networking communities focused on engagements with Judaism. She serves on the board of the Society for Crypto-Judaic Studies. She has lectured and presented at conferences around the United States in topics ranging from engagement with the descendants of Anusim, which is forced converts to Catholicism, to kosher locus. Her writing is the distillation of ideas that have been percolating for many years, drawing from her professional research, her multinational upbringing, and her experiences raising her own children. Thank you for coming.
Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Ronit Treatman, and I'm going to share with you some of the these are crypto-Jewish artifacts, and I'll share how I even got involved with this world. So I had no idea it had anything to do with me at all. I'm mixed. My father's side is from Central Asia, from Bukhara, which today is in Uzbekistan, and my mother, they're Polish Jews, super Ashkenazim with blue eyes. So, the only reason I had any connections to Sephardi Jews is because growing up in Venezuela, in Caracas, half the community was Sephardi, and I mean real Sephardis. From Spain, they could still trace what city they were from. They had the key. They only married each other, and the other half were Ashkenazi. So, but we had friends, and we would celebrate Passover with them, and I grew up with the stories. So I had a lot of sympathy. And so they were the ones, but this wasn't taught when I was a kid, not to me. They were the ones who told me about the Inquisition, the expulsion. And basically I said, so what's left in Spain and Iberia? And they said nothing. There's nothing left. It's dead. And that's what I thought. And not only that, they told me there is a cherem, a prohibition on visiting Spain for 500 years, which ended in 1992. So, I remember in 1992 people were saying, oh, now we can visit Toledo or wherever their family, we can finally go see it. So, the way I got to this was actually through the Ashkenazic side, because my grandparents were Holocaust survivors, and they took the position that if they could not confirm that someone had died, maybe they were still alive. And so I was very close to my grandmother, and when she was dying, she asked me not to stop looking. Of course, if you know Holocaust survivors, talking to them is walking on eggshells. I only had a last name. I didn't know the first names. I had the city and the last name. And so as technology evolved, my brother and I would look in the phone book, in Facebook, that sort of thing. And then finally, DNA testing became available for the first time. And we did it pretty early on. It was still really expensive, and it just came out with this company called GeneBase, based in Canada, and it's a lot more than 23andMe. It's not about finding family. It didn't have that kind of database, but it was about getting your matrilineal and patrilineal map. And the way it does it is it compares your DNA to all these different population groups, which they would give you the whole breakdown. It was kind of complicated and difficult to understand. And for example, they compared me to like Gypsy or Inuit or something. And then So I look at the two maps, because we took the test so that my brother could get my father's side and I could get my mother's side. And my dad's side, just what they said, a Babylonian expulsion, right? They go to Susa, to Iran, and then first they go to Babylon, then Susa, and then they end up in Bukhara, when it was all the Persian Empire. They were there for thousands of years, for a long time. And then it shows the Ashkenazi side. And there I get this huge surprise. It shows, it starts all in sort of like in Africa, Near East, and then it goes to Spain, which no one knew or thought about. And then it shows something even more interesting. Right around 1492, the family splits in two. The half I come from goes to Italy and then the Netherlands and then Poland. But then there's a half that stays there. And then it goes to Brazil. And I look at that and I go, oh, they became Catholic. So, I was so floored by this that I wrote about my experience. People weren't really using yet at the time DNA to know their background. And I wrote up an article about it. I sent it to the Times of Israel and it got published. And to my amazement, after that, all these people from Barcelona were sending me friend requests. I don't know anyone there. And what do they want? And you have to tell people in Venezuela do not like Spaniards. I'm like, what do they want from me? But, some of them seemed okay, so I gave them a chance. And then they start sharing these pictures with me. They go, yeah, we light candles, and then we put them in this clay pot and put them in the cupboard every Friday. Our family has always done it. My mom taught me to do it. That sort of thing, all their customs. So when I first realized, oh, it wasn't all dead the way I'd been told, I literally started to shake in front of the computer, and I took them such courage. I mean, from what I knew about the Inquisition, such courage to do any of this if they were caught, that I just felt for them, like, they were, living this double life still, even now. And it's, when I lived in Venezuela, I did grow up there. I grew up from age 6 to 18. The first year I went to a Jesuit school because that's the school there was where we were. So I was really taught by nuns, and I feel like it's made a bridge between me and them. Like, I get them in a way, and they can trust me in the way they can't really trust other people, because that combination of being Israeli but also having studied like them a little bit, and I did grow up in a really Catholic country. So first I just started doing a little bit of outreach in Facebook. And then I made a friend over Facebook. His name is Ashley Perry. He's an English Jew. He made Aliyah. He lives in Israel. And he was working in the Knesset. This was sort of in around 2016 or so. And he headed the caucus. There was a caucus to reconnect with the descendants of Jews from Iberia. So he headed that caucus, and then he founded an organization called Reconectar. So initially he doesn't speak Spanish or Portuguese or anything except Hebrew and English. So I told him, forget it. If you don't speak Spanish, they'll never confide in you. Plus, he was using Google Translate. I said, no, let me correct all this for you. You can't publicize like this. So every day I helped and helped and helped. And then I just basically volunteered, and I created the content in Spanish and Portuguese and Catalan. And the fact that I don't speak Portuguese and Catalan is not an impediment. I've taught myself. I can understand and read it now. So I'm working with it. And so it's grown and grown. And so, of course, people started to they have no one to talk to. A lot of these people live in places there are no Jews. Also, they don't talk to each other. It's a big taboo. They could finally send me emails or messages on Facebook and ask me things, right? And it would be things like, I have this tradition, I don't know what I'm doing. And I try to decode it to see if it was a Jewish thing, a Christian thing mixed together, and if it was, how to separate it out. One day I get this amazing email from a young woman in Venezuela, and she goes, well, I think we descend from Jews. And I go, why do you think that, right? What kind of traditions have you found that you think? She goes, well, we have lots of pictures of Queen Esther all over the house. And I'm going, Queen Esther? I'm thinking of it like an Israeli. I go, well, okay, Venezuela is the land of the beauty queens. It is. And from my Israeli perspective, right, Queen Esther was the most beautiful girl in Persia, and she got the king. Who doesn't want to do that? Right? We all dress up like that for Purim. But then I started to look into it, and I realized, oh, no. For them, it means something completely different. So what they did, for them, it's a symbol of resistance, right? Because I don't know if you know anything about the Catholic Bible, but we have our scroll of Esther in the Jewish Bible. or as part of what we read. They have a scroll of Esther in the Catholic Bible, but it's got more in it than ours, right? So in ours, there's no mention of God. But in the scroll of Esther of the Catholics, there is a prayer. She prays, and it's interesting how the prayer goes, because she prays to God, but to the God of the children of Israel, the only God she believes in. And she says, they have sinned and help me. So that's in there. So for them, what they did was, they did something a lot of other people did, like the Native Americans. What would happen, after the Jews were expelled, the ones who were forced to convert, many of them practiced in secret. That's called being crypto-Jews. And so in Spain and Portugal, they took Esther, they turned her into a saint. How did they do that? Well, the Catholic Church doesn't, in the Catholic tradition, the Vatican doesn't make saints. Saints exist. They're all around us. They lived in perfect holiness. I mean, anyone here could be a saint. They're just waiting to be discovered. So they discovered this saint. Native Americans did this too, by the way. Like in Caracas, before the Spanish came, there was a Native American queen. There's a statue of her still, like she's naked on a horse. Well, they just put a little dress on her, and now she's a saint too. So they turned Esther into a saint, and for them, if you look at her story, Esther was a crypto-Jew, right? She was born Hadassah. Then her uncle Mordechai changed her name to Esther and told her, don't forget your Hadassah, but don't tell anyone you're Jewish. And then she kept trying to keep some Jewish traditions. Like they said, she was a vegetarian. She didn't want to eat non-kosher meat. She never forgot who she was, and when the time came, she took off her mask, right, and she saved her people. She took a risk to do it. So for them, she's a symbol of resistance. She was a role model of how you can remain who you are, even if it's forced on you. So basically, you have, that is how that, hold on, I have some more interesting things. I just want to remember what they were. So you have so how did this is from America. How did it come here? You had when did Columbus find America? 1492. When was the expulsion from Spain? The Alhambra Decree, 1492. So I don't know if Columbus was Jewish or not. Some people think he was a crypto-Jew, but certainly people in his crew, like his translator, whose last name was Torres, who spoke Hebrew and some other languages. And so coming to America was really dangerous. The people who were escaping from the Inquisition volunteered, and they came, and they first started sort of in Mexico in the 1500s. And you have even, I don't know if you saw in the press a couple of years ago, they rediscovered this booklet that was written in the Inquisition jails of Mexico. It was this sort of, his last name was Carvajal. He was one of the founders of Mexico City, and he was put in jail in Mexico for what they call Judaizing. And he made a book out of corn leaves, dried corn leaves, and he wrote on them with carbon all his crypto-Jewish prayers. And it reappeared. It surfaced in an antiques auction in New York, and somebody donated it back to Mexico. And they did have it on exhibit in New York. So they brought St. Esther with them. And I've had people call me, people in Spain and Portugal venerate her. You have, I've had people tell me any female saint will do because it's what she means to you. So what they basically did was they put her into carnival. If you look at how carnival was celebrated in Spain, right around 1500, all of a sudden there was a carnival queen. Before that, there hadn't been one, right? It's like Queen Esther. And in the Canary Islands, to this day, they make an effigy of the carnival queen and they burn her. And that was like a warning to themselves. And if we're discovered, this is what will happen to us. In Brazil, they also have Mordechai. His name is King Momo. So they have a carnival queen and a king. So and what they do for Purim, their celebration, they call it the fast and feast of St. Esther. And for them, the fast is actually more important than the feast. Because why? Because since they're fake converts, they always feel like they're sinning. So fasting is expiation. So they put a lot more accent on the fasting and the feasting. And then the Feast of St. Esther is sort of, they light a candle for St. Esther. They actually think Moses is also a saint for them, so they have one for St. Moses. for the same reason, because he liberated the Jews. And then the women are the ones who transmit this holiday. This is a holiday in the home of mothers and daughters. Sorry, I can answer a question.
Okay, didn't want to interrupt you. So the people who made Queen Esther a saint and a queen, which was, and Mordecai a king?
Yes,
What people are these?
crypto Jews.
I never heard of a,
Yeah, it's like converse.
like a converso?
Yes, converso, a person who can, on the outside acts like a Christian, but on the inside is still practicing Judaism. So, and this kind of practice, it's called syncretism. When you hide a Jewish tradition inside of a Christian tradition, that's what this is. So yes, they added Queen Esther to Carnival, and it came to America too. If you go to some places like Texas and New Mexico, they bring they turn some of these Virgin Mary statues in the churches are really Queen Esther's. They have a different date for the wood, and also different type of wood for the Mary and the baby. The baby was like tacked on later, she's Mary, but she isn't. I mean, they actually tested, they had tested the wood to check. This is from one of the most famous artists in the United States who makes saints. It's called a Santero. He's in New Mexico. His name is Charlie Carrillo. His work hangs in the Smithsonian. He's an amazing man. He has a doctorate in archaeology. He's a professor in the University of New Mexico. And his whole thing is he went back to the Native American tradition of making paints from nature. Everything here is from the nature of New Mexico. Every color you see, he uses plants, animals, dirt, anything he found around him. And he made this in the New Mexico tradition. The first one I got was this one, because I was so intrigued that I called the saint makers of New Mexico, and I said, in Albuquerque, I said, is it true, does anybody make a Saint Esther? By chance, I happened to call his cousin, not knowing what it was, I just picked one. Started talking to him in Spanish, because amazingly, they did become part of the United States later, in 1834, but still, they're still speaking Spanish at home, which I'm impressed by. So first he wants to know who I am, and then my story was interesting to him, and then he said, why don't you talk to my cousin Charlie? And he gave me his cell phone number. So he said, yeah, I have St. Esther's, and sometimes people ask me for them, and so he sold me this one. And so you see, he explained it to me. He said, I made this one, and you can, welcome to come up anytime to look at it too. So this is in the New Mexico style, so it's like a stage. You have these red curtains, and the colors are very important. So the red, it's like blood, it means, danger and sacrifice, and she's sacrificing for her people. You have myrtle branches on top, reminds us of her name, Hadassah, which means myrtle. Hadassah is a myrtle. Green is also the color of life. You have Queen Esther in the middle. She's wearing a yellow dress. It's like royalty and power, the sun. And she has a, how do you call this? Scepter with a pomegranate on top, because that's a Jewish symbol, right? For fertility and all the mitzvot. So she has a pomegranate, and basically the reason he makes it is he sets the stage. He says you have to understand the story quickly because life is short and the curtain will close. So this is the first one he sold. And then, COVID started. For the community that I work with, they're all descendants of forced converts. So I wrote this book, and the point was, they're all over the place. Many of them have no Jews where they are, and they're not welcome in the Jewish communities either. They're just not. And that's how it is in Latin America. It's a very hermetically sealed community, and it's also not the fault of the rabbis, because there was, I'll talk here so you can hear me. It's not the fault of the rabbis, because there was a rabbinic judgment that they are not allowed to convert anyone there. If they want to convert, they have to go to Israel or maybe New York to go to a Beit Din and do it there. So they basically push everybody away. So when people have questions, usually they try to write to me, and I've had everything from university students who have a paper to write and don't have a Jew to interview for it. And a very interesting question from some young man in Mexico who said he had to write a paper about the difference and why there's so much art in the church but not in the center. No no images in the synagogue. And a lot of very interesting questions, so, that was interesting. But I also had people write about their customs, or I want to understand, how do I celebrate Sukkot, or how do I do this? So this book I wrote for them, and I also wrote, Spanish and Portuguese and Catalan. I wrote the Spanish one. I made my brother-in-law edit it for me because he's from Mexico. But the other two, I actually hired descendants of forced converts to write it. The one in Portuguese is a descendant of a woman called Branca Diaz. Branca Diaz, when she went to Recife, she was accused of what they call Judaism, because she was. She founded the first synagogue and the first Jewish school of Brazil. She was caught by the Inquisition. Judaizing means to teach Jewish customs, Jewish ideas, and of course to live as a Jew. She was actually taken back to Portugal and tried and burned at the stake, for which she did. This is one of her descendants. She still lives in Brazil. I translated for me. And then I have one in Catalan, another one who they're always afraid to tell me this. So they always have this whole denial thing where they say, well, I'm not sure. Well, she did that for a while. She translated the book to Catalan. She's from sort of near Barcelona. But after a while, after it was done, she finally told me, I really want you to get me a Star of David necklace when you go to Israel next time, which I did, and I sent it to her. And then now she's starting to return. Not that I pushed it, which I never do. And they all know that. When they ask me, what should I do now? I tell them it's up to you. The other interesting thing about Esther is if you look at the root of the name, Esther, the root is setel. In Hebrew, I don't know if any of you speak Hebrew, but setel means sort of hidden or secret or occult. And by the way, when we were talking about how you choose a last name, right? People didn't really have last names before the 1400s. It was usually Ben David, right? You're the son of, the way sort of the Arabs do it as Abba, the father of what, for us it's the son of. You could be Ben David, Ben Abraham, whichever. So when people were forced to convert, they had to take a new name. And many of them chose names from nature, that sort of thing. But some of them made names that contained the secret message in their name. And I'll tell you my favorite one. If you ever have a client whose last name is Rojas, right? Rojas in Spanish, red is, right? Roja is red. But if you turn the name around, it's Sahor, which is Hebrew, Zahor. Remember. And so there are all kinds of little games like that in the names, which probably by now they don't know anymore. Many times it's the name of a city. So the one time, someone, when I was growing up in Venezuela, openly told me about the Jewish ancestry was because he was a very wealthy and powerful man. He didn't care. He wasn't afraid of anybody. He was a dad of somebody in the school. I went to the international school. He was a father, not Jewish, Venezuelan, and very Catholic. And when he found out I was from Israel, I think I was playing at home with his kid. He said, oh, we were Jews once. And I'm looking at him like, what are you talking about? Right? I was only like 12. And he said, yeah, my family were Jews from Spain, from Tudela. That's why we have this last name. And then he told me the most fascinating thing. This was in the 1980s. He told me, I traveled to Israel, not as a Catholic pilgrim or anything like that. I wanted to see who I could have been. And that is something so many people tell me. Who would we have been if this hadn't been done to us, right? What would we have achieved? So it's an interesting question. There's a real feeling of loss, and it's very interesting to work with this community because, first of all, it's a huge taboo for them to talk. Now I finally opened a conversation. I've worked with them for over 10 years or so. They finally trust me. We're on Facebook. We have a little community, and I finally opened it up. I said, I know that some of you write to me, you're so afraid. Why don't we have a discussion amongst us? We can talk here, it's safe. And it's amazing, it's exploded. They finally can talk after 500 years. And so one interesting thing that happens, sometimes you have people who don't know each other, but turns out they share genealogy, and they help each other research. They help each other dig back. Or they help solve questions. So I'll share some of the Jewish things they do, but don't understand. And it is amazing how much has been preserved. For example, the mourning customs. someone was telling me that when someone passes away, first of all, they never call a priest. They have someone in the community who comes. And only after the person is dead, they call a priest. But that person is there. And then they wash the body, they wrap the body just as we do with white shroud. They bury, and then they go home, and they sort of have like a wake, but it's a lot like a shiva. 7 days, they cover the mirrors. And then there was a thing, one woman said, yeah, and then we throw water. I go, okay, that's sort of like when I go to the cemetery in Israel, we go in from one side, we visit the grave, we leave the other gate, and we have to wash our hands. It's a purification ritual. But then there was one woman in Brazil who goes, well, I was taught I have to throw water outside when it rains. And I'm going, when it rains? Why then? I don't understand that. And then another person said, oh, imagine you're teaching it to a child. You say Shiva, water during Shiva, but they hear Shuvia, rain, Shuvia. So that's how it evolves, right? And then becomes warped over time. So, would you like to ask me questions about anything particular? Yes?
Yeah, are some of these people able to trace their matrilineal
Yes. I have a friend.
so that they don't have to convert?
Yes, it's very hard to do that. I have a friend, she's originally from Cuba, she lives in Miami. Her name is Jenny Milgram. She actually wrote a book about it. It's called My 15 Grandmothers. And it's unbelievable. She didn't know, right? She grew up very conflicted. She grew up in this super Catholic home, went to Catholic school, hated it, and then sort of married a nice Catholic man, had 2 kids, and then said, no, I have to convert to Judaism. I think her first conversion maybe was Reform, I'm not sure. But she kept getting more and more, like now she's way more observant than I am, that's for sure. Divorced, remarried a rabbi, and has been, she was the president of the Society of Crypto-Judaic Studies, went all the way back to Portugal with her genealogy. And what she found was astounding. She was from a place called Fermoselle, her family. She found the home, and I saw pictures in Facebook. She went under the house. They had like what was a cellar, but it was really a secret warren of tunnels connecting houses, and they had a prayer part in the middle, and something that could be used as a mikveh. I mean, still there. After all this time, and still the owner of the house tried not to let her go down there to see what it was. Actually, the owner hung ham by the door, saying, no, it's just storage, don't go in, just to keep people out of there. But she did something that's almost impossible to do. She has a certificate from the Rabbinate of Israel of return. She had converted, but she didn't have to do it. And by the way, in the beginning, they would do that. Like people who had converted just to survive, and then let's say they went to North Africa, right? Because the places people went would be north to France, or if they could, east toward Italy, wherever they could go, or south to North Africa. And in North Africa, they had ceremony of return for people. They had it in other places too. It's much more difficult to do it now because the whole point was people were hiding their ancestry. So they would buy what was called a limpieza de sangre, right? That you had, they actually stole that idea from us, right? What do a lot of families say? Don't bring a non-Jew, don't marry outside the faith, marry Jewish or, Ashkenazi or whatever. Well, they were like, what do you mean we're not good enough for you? You're not good enough for us. We have purity of blood. And so, for example, you could not come to the New World if you didn't have a certificate that said, and people would buy them. People would bribe, they did whatever they had to do and try to hide and change their names. And remember, for 160 years, you could not access the archives of the Inquisition. They were only open in 1998 by Pope John Paul II. And it was only then, some of it is digitized, some not. But only now, you can try to do some research. I mean, I can't because it's my matrilineal side. I don't have any last names. I can only hope that people in Brazil can afford to do more DNA testing, and maybe I can connect with, hot Brazilian cousins who can samba, which, who knows. But I do have another friend who did it. She's from Portugal. She found relatives in Israel. It can happen. It does happen. So it's interesting because one thing that connects me to this community is I tell them, I published about this in Israel, You should have seen the blowback I got in Israel for this. I mean, sure, you think people treat you like it's a stigma you were Jewish. Well, I had some people in Israel say, oh my God, why did you dig? Why couldn't you just leave it alone? You know, you thought you were Ashkenazi. And by the way, that side is not Sephardic. It's still Ashkenazi. Why? Because the test showed me the city we were from in Spain. It was Girona, which is north of Barcelona, and Catalonia is Ashkenazi. Not the same kind of Ashkenazi as, you know, Ukraine, but it is. Why is that? Because it wasn't under Muslim rule as long, just for a little bit, and the south was longer, so there was less mixing. They mix more with Ashkenazi Jews. So actually, there's a category for it. We're called the Catalani, Catalan Jews, its own thing. Not, you know, the way Italian Jews are their own thing. Not Sephardic, not the same Ashkenazi, but it is Ashkenazi. So, you know, I did have people say, oh God, what a stain, you have maybe non-Jews in your family, or who knows, not Ashkenazi, not even white, I don't know. I mean, I don't care, but other people do. So.
What happened to the woman who had all the Esther paintings in her home?
She actually ended up marrying a Persian Jew, converted to Judaism, learned Persian. She wrote a cookbook published by the Chabad. Her name is Reina Simnegar. She wrote a cookbook that was published by the Chabad publishing house. She went Chabad. Some people do because they're there.
So all the pictures of Esther in the home were actually related to her Jewish ancestors?
Yes. Venezuela has it. I mean, I have a group on Facebook that reached out. Some groups, they make themselves and then they reach out to me and they ask me if I can post some material too. There's one of Venezuelans. I mean, they have a house that they turned into a museum, not when I lived there, but now. It's called the Señor House in, there's a peninsula, it's called Coro. There was a family, the senior family, Sephardi, who came from Curacao. And they were there early, like, I don't know, 1700s, and they were trading in coffee and cacao. And they had this house, and then there was discovered inside the house a synagogue and a mikveh. Now it's being turned into a museum. Not that anyone can go there, but yes. So, no, it's true. There were definitely people who, the one thing about Venezuela has always been a little wild. And so, you know, you had, you see, the Inquisition came to America following these people. There was one in Peru, in Lima, there was one in Mexico City, there was one in Chile. Well, Venezuela sort of had what they call it, visitations, but all I can tell you is they never made it out alive. It was always like, oh, the Native Americans attacked them. They're dead, everything disappeared. So, yes.
Did you talk about cooking with these people?
Sure. Yes, so interestingly for Purim, the kinds of things they would make depended where they were. Like the ones in New Mexico and Texas, it's a very nice day. And they still celebrate, they call it El Día de Esther, right? Esther's Day. They still celebrate it. One man was generous, he doesn't allow me to show it to you, but he let me see a video of his family celebration. So after they fast for 3 days, the women, all the girls and women of the family, they get together and they make some special food. In their case, it's empanadas. In Spain, it's other things. In Spain, it could be a casserole and a cheesecake. I mean, it's not, again, I told you, it's about the fasting, not about the eating for them. But it's a happy celebration, and they make a party. They have family heirlooms, like his family had a crown, like for Queen Esther, they pick a queen of the party, Queen Esther. They have, what did you call it? Scepter, a scepter, sorry, the word. Scepter and a crown, and they made a Haman piñata. Loved it. They had a Haman piñata. They had great music, really fun music, like Israeli songs but Latin American style. Really, really. I said, make a record. I love it. Love this band. And then they had a lot of liquor, great party. Everyone, and this goes to show, you know, when we dress up, we can be all kinds of things, whether it's Halloween or Purim. Well, they all wore a masquerade mask. Everybody something on the face, not showing the face in the photo, even now, because you have to understand that they are conditioned to fear. And if they still live in the same community, they're conditioned to fear and their neighbors are conditioned to spy on them. It's still like that. If you go to Albuquerque or El Paso or something like that, it's still that way. And what's crazy, I mean, The Spanish culture is so strong that they were showing me. Let's say you buy a piece of land somewhere in New Mexico. The original deed is in Spanish, from the Spanish crown. It's still in the file. You know, that's still that part of it. And they feel like they'll be discriminated against if someone knows this, and they probably will be.
You referenced a book called 15 Grandmothers.
What about it?
You talked about a book called 15 Grandmothers, and you have your book, Hands-On Jewish Holidays. Is there any other book, like it's a memoir? That you
Well, I think a fabulous book. Unfortunately, he passed. There was a professor who was unbelievable. So, well, Jenny Milgram did write a memoir too, but there's several books I could really recommend. I have a friend who wrote, it's more for like younger readers, but very good, about her family, called the Watchmen series. She kind of talks about her family and how they eluded the Inquisition. There's a very good book of recipes pulled from the Inquisition records by Dr. David Gitlitz and Dr. Linda Davidson, husband and wife team, who, I mean, he did a lot of research, and he actually has things like Passover is coming up. Okay, so Passover is about the food. I'm just gonna, because Passover is coming up, I'll tell you about this. So one tradition they kept that really got them in trouble was matzah. Matzah was really important, and they tried to keep Passover. The main holidays they really kept were Yom Kippur and Passover. So Passover, matzah, and if they didn't have things to make matzah the traditional way, they would use what was available. So for example, there were Inquisition records in Spain where they used chestnuts, right? They would sort of mash them, they would mix them with eggs and honey and kind of pancake them and make them be kind of like a matzah. And in Mexico, that's what tortillas were, right? They were using something that didn't have any leaven. They would use the comal, the stone, and whether it was corn. Later in the north they had wheat, but not in the beginning. I mean, the wheat tortillas are from the north originally, and you still have the big community of crypto-Jewish families is in Monterrey, even now. That's where most of them are. But you do have other places.
Are you saying that now, in Texas, Jews can't be free to be Jews?
No, Jews can. Jews can. The Inquisition had no jurisdiction over Jews. The Inquisition only had jurisdiction over Christians. So if somebody said, I convert to Catholicism, but is secretly celebrating Yom Kippur, they would go after them. Me, I mean, I never converted, so they have no they may not like me, but they have no jurisdiction over me. Just as a rabbinic court has no jurisdiction over them, you're not Jewish. So no, you're free to be Jews, of course you are. And there's a nice Jewish community there, but this community, who's been there since 1500 and something, whenever they went up north, 1583 I believe it was. New Mexico was 1583. You had the Oñate expedition. They went up there. And so that's when, ever since then, all these families have been living together. And they know who's who, by the way, because I had a man write to me. And one of the things his mother would tell was, yes, that's a good family. It had nothing to do with money. That's not a good family. He'd say, what's the difference? I don't get it. No, but they're a good family and they're not. So you can date that one, but not this one. So they kept tabs. But it's a conditioning thing. Just because the Inquisition ended in, I guess, 1835, that didn't mean that the behavior and the thoughts changed. It's too ingrained. I mean, to this day, the last time I was in Barcelona, I was walking, well, there are very few Jews. I was walking down the Rambla, and I heard young people behind me conversing, and they were talking about how expensive real estate is. And one of them said, oh, you need to be a Jew to afford it. And I'm like, what, have you ever met a Jew in your life? You know? But that's expressions in their language which are never positive, okay? Yes?
So what, like the crypto Jews in Texas, what do they practice?
Well, some of them, there is a rabbi there, okay, there's a synagogue for Anusim, the Anusim synagogue. He teaches them this, he teaches them, they live Jewish lives now. He has helped them return. They have a synagogue. And they do what everyone does. They do Purim, they do Passover, everything. And what's nice is, so he'll do a big Seder in the synagogue. That's how he teaches, by example, by having community, by including everyone. So everyone, it's so sweet. They have a kitchen, they have a mashgiach, so everybody They cook the Seder, right? They learn everything. Yes?
What do you think caused all their concerns to be allowed to come out now? Because it's only in the last maybe 15 years that,
Well, first of all, it was hard to do research before now. You might have had suspicions, right, that you have Sephardic ancestry. But if you do a DNA test, the DNA test may show it. I've had people, here's a very interesting thing I just had happen. So somebody wrote me a message from, he lives in Barcelona. He goes, I did a DNA test, I have Ashkenazi ancestry, and he wanted to understand why I wasn't Sephardic. So I explained to him what I just explained to you. Finally, he felt more comfortable with me. He's been writing to me every day now on Facebook, every day writing questions and things. Very concerned about what's happening in Israel. They're all really Zionist. Finally, he felt comfortable. He said, you know, I have a diagnosis of something, and I'm afraid it's because of a genetic thing, like an Ashkenazi genetic thing. And I'm too scared to get tested for it here in Spain, which, you know, I would be too. And I said, well, you know, you can order a test from England. They have one. He finally told me, well, I'm going to visit Israel. I said, okay, go do medical tourism. Go to Hadassah Hospital, pay for your DNA test, and it's yours. I mean, no one is going to see it unless you permit it, right? It's up to you to consent. So it has other implications. Somebody did ask me earlier about the health implications. And one of the interesting things that happened in New Mexico, only a few years ago, they were finding the BRCA gene for breast cancer in Hispanic women in Texas and New Mexico. Nobody could understand that. And one thing I've been telling people when I talk to Hispanic audiences, I say, look, I'm definitely not telling them to convert. And the ones who grew up in Latin America told you know very well we do not proselytize. In fact, good luck being invited to a synagogue. And that's when they laugh, because they know. And I told them, but for your health and more importantly, your family, you need to know, if you have BRCA, you want to tell your daughters about this. You want to tell them to check, right?
The autosomal DNA tests only go back 500 years. So if the family was Sephardic greater than 500 years ago, it wouldn't show up.
I think, well, you only need to go then, because what happened 500 years ago, there was a huge Jewish community in Iberia. When did they come there, do you know? They came as the slaves of the Romans, right? After the Beit HaMikdash, the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed in the year 70 of the Common Era, right? They took a bunch of people as slaves, and it was the end of the world. It was Sfarad, which is why it's called that. So there were a lot. And so, and you know, as just said, Ashkenazim, Sephardim, you know, that's one. And then 1492 was a split. And I think the people who went further toward Ukraine and Poland and maybe mixed more with people who had gone down the Rhine to begin with, who never went to Iberia. That's the Ashkenazim. You would see, if you have Sephardic ancestry, if it goes back to 1492, you will see it. It will be there. I mean, I don't agree with that. I mean, my thing showed, I mean, at least the one that I took with gene-based, it showed the different comparison to the populations. I don't think that it has an expiration date. I really don't. I don't know why you think that. Where did you read that?
A lot.
I don't know about that. That's not how my test appeared to me. And I made my brother explain it to me because he's a scientist. At first I said, I really don't understand anything in this test. But he kind of walked me through it. Any questions from anyone? Yes.
Yes. Your grandmother was a Polish Jew, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and what did you say about your grandfather or your father?
No, his family was from Central Asia, from Bukhara, which is a city on the Silk Road. Bukharian Jews, have you ever heard? Right, that's what.
But he's Jewish.
Of course. Yeah, that was from the Jewish community that was the Babylonian expulsion.
And they stayed?
Of course. They're still big Babylonian Jews. So they went to Babylon in the beginning, then the whole thing merged into the Persian Empire. They were free to go anywhere in the Persian Empire. They went to Susa, where Esther is from, Shushan. And from there along the Silk Road to Bukhara, which was a big center of scholarship and trade. And my great-grandfather was there and was a rabbi, a shochet, and a moel, all three. My great-grandmother was a silk trader. She probably spoke a little Chinese. And it was a big center. The Jews were dyers of silk. They dyed silk. It was beautiful. They used the saffron. They did this gold silk. And you know, the silks from there are still very famous.
When I was in the Dominican Republic, there was an area called Sosua, and a lot of Jewish people had gone there, and they make yogurt and dairy stuff. Are you familiar with that at all?
Not from the Dominican Republic, but I can tell that in Mexico, which I've read more about, and there's more research about Mexico, the cotija, they were Jews, cotija cheese. And you'll go to places like Oaxaca, they don't eat pork there. It's goat. Puebla, no pork. So they'll make like their tacos and stuff, and it's goat. Yeah, in Mexico, there's a lot. And they have, what's interesting now there's an Inquisition museum. There's one in Mexico, there's one in Lima. And, it's funny because they have the big plaza where they used to burn people. But now it's a big shopping center. There's they're ashamed of it. There's like a really tiny sign in the corner that says what it was. There's a you wanted a memoir, an amazing book of a true story. It's called Revenge on the Inquisition. Just translated last year to English. I read it in Spanish, a magisterial work. Truly one of the best books I've ever read, a true story about, and I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but a physician who was a forced convert and was tried in Chile. And that's all I will say, but get the book. It's amazing.
What's the title?
Revenge on the Inquisition.
On or of the?
Let's see how we wrote it. I think it was on. I don't know who translated it, but let me see.
Like, I found 15 grandmothers, and there's a cookbook.
Yeah, Gitlitz. That's the one you want. David Gitlitz. It's called A Drizzle of Honey. The cookbook is great because it has the page from the archives.
One of the things I liked about the book is one of the ways they would question Jews is asking them, how do you make this?
Correct.
And if they used any ingredients that weren't in their standard Spanish recipes, they knew that was a Jew and they were subject to death.
Right, so initially there were a little bit, let's see, what's the book called? All right, let me look for it in Spanish and I'll tell you who the author is. Hold on. And it was written by a physician. Yes, so here it is. It's by Marcos Aguinis. Marcos Aguinis. Here, let's see if they show it in English too. I have it here in Spanish.
Is it on Amazon?
Yes. His last name is Aguinis. Marcos Aguinis. So he's himself a physician from Chile, and he actually traveled everywhere to track this book. It's unbelievable. And it is one of the most famous inquisitorial trials from Chile. So, yes, so I was starting to say, when Jews were first forced to convert, the Inquisition was a little bit lenient, because sometimes they would say, well, we didn't know yet all the traditions. Like if we're eating cheese on a day, we're not supposed to eat cheese as Catholics. We just didn't know that yet. So they would be like, yeah, okay, it's a learning curve. We're gonna give you a chance, right? One of the other interesting things that has Jewish roots, talking about food, okay, you know it as cholent, but the original name of it is chamin from the Torah, right? Chamin means, cham is hot, and the way the Torah would explain that how to make a stew for Shabbat, it would say bury the hot, right? To bury it under the ground. Why? Because the way they would cook it was an earth oven. They'd make a hole, they'd put some hot charcoal in it, that can burn for like 2 days. They'd have probably a clay pot with whatever they put in it, and they'd seal it, and then they'd put it in there overnight. And that's how they made the original cholent. It's called chamin. And that, of course, went to Iberia with the Jews, that tradition. So if you ever look at the stews in Spain, like cocido gallego, yeah, it's full of pork, but what do you think was the origin of it? And of course, they were so afraid of the Inquisition, they'd always be displaying pork to show that they're good Catholics now, they're not keeping kosher. And like one of Jenny Milgram's interesting recipes is they would cook one piece of pork to fill the house with the smell, and then they would make something that was like a French toast, but cut it to look like pork. So that if anybody saw them eating it, it looked like they were eating a piece of pork, but they weren't. So that's the kind of things that people would do.
You mentioned Girona in Spain. I've been there. Have you been there?
Yes, I went there. I wrote an article about that too. I was very intrigued. I went to see it.
They have a nice museum.
Yes, by the time I went in the medieval city, there was a forgotten Jewish neighborhood, right? And when the Jews were expelled, the Christians were scared to move into their houses because they didn't want them to say, oh, you must be a relative, we're going to take you too. So they were just abandoned, and then over time the neighbors built over those houses, took over the sort of the space. And then it was kind of run down, and then there was a gentrification movement in the 70s. And this one artist bought this house, and he was obsessed. He was convinced it was a synagogue. They dug down and they found it. It was the synagogue. It was now it's the museum.
Yeah.
That's the one, but he was sure of it. And it's interesting because they repurposed their building materials. So like I saw a well, it had 7 mezuzah holes. It had been 7 doors, that they used to make a well. They were reusing the stones.
And they told us in the museum, it's beautifully kept up, but there's no Jewish people that take care of
This
it.
is not true because, and you have to know Spanish and you have to know how to listen, because when I went to their gift store, it's run by a historian. His
Great books there.
last name is Chicoira. What does Chicoira mean? Chicory. And I go, oh, Chicoira. And the way they say it, he goes, some people think that it's a Jewish name. I don't know. That's how they always have a deniability. No, he was. And, I bought a book there by somebody else of all the last names from there that are Jewish. I have it at home. No, there's a lot more.
They have great books there.
No, there's a lot more than you think.
Chicory is a Jewish name?
Well, if you were forced to convert, it is, because they had to take a name. They took it from nature. So you will meet somebody whose name is Toledo, Tudela, whichever city, Madrid. Okay, that was person who forced to convert, took the name of the city. Same thing happened in Italy. Part of Italy was part of Spain for, like Sicily, for example. So you'll find people with the name of their city there. I had a neighbor who finally confessed that to me, Italian American. And he said, yeah, we went to see only when he found out what I do. We went to see my city. I know that's why we have this name. Yes.
Pear trees, a big.
Pereira, yeah, no, this is in Portugal, in Brazil.
Branding by that.
Pereira, Oliveira,
Pereira.
so pear tree, olive tree, correct. Pereira, Oliveira, correct.
People are branding by that.
Who was the author again? G-U?
Of what? Oh, Aguirre is A-G-U. Here, let me show you, sorry.
You have a
I had him up. Here.
A-G-U. I-N-I-S. Okay.
That is a book worth getting, it's amazing.
What's the name of the book?
And in English, I don't know, that's why you need to look him up, because I only have it in Spanish. But I know he translated it, so now you're lucky you're able to read it.
Whatever happened to the woman who left her Catholic husband and
She married a rabbi.
What about the children?
Oh, well, it was very interesting because she has a documentary, which you can watch as well. It just came out a little bit ago, and it was interesting with children. The children have no interest in Judaism. They think it did bad things to their family, because their parents split up. And the daughter says it, it's very heartbreaking. She says it was super weird because she was in Catholic school because that was the deal with the father. But her mother was observing Shabbat, so she could never go to her cheerleading things and that kind of thing. The son said, well, I lived with her until I was, not allowed to have my little Christmas tree anymore, so then I moved out.
What's the title of that documentary?
I think she calls it Between a Stone and a Flower. Because she's showing when she goes to the cemetery, the Jewish ancestors, she puts a stone, but also a flower because some of them lived as Catholic. No, there's a lot of pain, obviously. She does all this work, and she already told me she's gonna donate it because her kids don't care and don't want it. They just, to them. And when she was doing this journey, her mother kept telling her, what you're doing is very, very dangerous. And she's very impressive, but she paid a high price, she did.
Yeah, then between the stone and the flower.
Right, so they screen it, I've seen it, well, first of all, when she first screened it, she does different Jewish film festivals, I was able to get like a Vimeo ticket because I couldn't go. But then she came to Philadelphia and I helped organize her screening. So I saw it twice,
So is that the other book you published? published?
Yes.
You have a memoir also?
No,
You're working on a memoir.
no, this is not about me. This is me giving to them. This is not about putting myself in the
That's
spot.
on Amazon, I just bought it.
Right, so I want you to enjoy seeing these. Oh, I want to tell you something interesting about, I forgot I was gonna go there. So the second one I bought, okay, you see how different she is from the first one. What do you notice is different with that one? If you can't see it, you'll come up, or I'll tell you a little bit, you'll come up later.
Well, the clothing's different.
Right, but if you look at it, first of all, it doesn't have the same curtains. Second,
The color.
there's something up here that you can't see, and it's Hebrew letters.
Yes.
So what happened? Why did this happen? Charlie Carrillo had a terrible car accident. He almost died. And, you know, we're friends, like, we talk, he tells me. And then he went on a visit to Israel, and he finally confessed to me his Jewish roots, and he goes, something changed for me. And if you notice, so now she's not hiding anymore. Her letter, her name is in Hebrew, Estelle. He learned to write in Hebrew. And she's not on our stage. The play has ended and the circle is closed. And, you know, he tells me, it touches me. Like, I think, I mean, I'm not going to say he's a practicing Jew, but he connected back. He went to Israel. He didn't go as a Catholic tourist. And now when he makes these, he makes them in Hebrew. And she's, you know, she's public about who she is. Yes.
It's interesting, from here, at first when I looked at it, and she's holding the scepter, it looks like she's holding a Torah.
Yes, that's interesting. Let me look at that. I haven't thought about that.
Yeah,
From a distance, yeah.
Oh, I'll have to tell him that. He'll love that.
Yeah.
He probably did that unconsciously. I'll have to tell him that.
What is it, a tail?
A Torah.
Oh, a Torah.
It looks like he's holding a Torah.
Yeah, I could see that.
Right. So I'm planning to donate these two to a museum in Israel at some point. I think it's, you know, in Israel, it's very interesting. In Israel, people really, really don't know anything about this at all. I mean, they don't even know what it is, and they don't know anything about that. It could also be their story as it is mine. So, you know, I think that there's a lack of appreciation for, you know, what people went through to preserve these traditions. The other one that we talked about, that a lot of them share with me, is how they clean the house, where they clean to the center of the room. They never sweep out the door. I don't know how many of you were taught to clean like that, but that's a pre-Inquisition custom to show respect to the mezuzah. You know, you don't sweep past that.
Oh, so you bring everything
To the center.
Yeah, so I was telling them once, I said, it's the only custom I share with you guys. And, you know, I was taught to clean like this
to
too.
do that all the time.
There you are. So, yeah, so I mean, I love doing this work. I do it as a volunteer. I do it for, you know, just this,
I'm gonna ask you, what do you think is the history, the future of the crypto Jews? Like,
so the future, you know, it's interesting because they take it from the book of how do you say, Obadiah? Obadiah. So in Obadiah 1:20, it says, and the children of Sfarad will go to the Negev. And some of them actually are planning a city in the Negev for themselves. They're planning an eco city. They're hoping one day to be allowed to make Aliyah. They want to go live in the Negev and build a city and help build Israel. So, you know, it's problematic if they're not welcome, if they don't get to convert to, but there are people, like there's one man, his name is Rabbi Ventura. He went to the Hebrew University, he went to Yeshiva in Israel. He really did it, and he has a synagogue. I mean, he's impressive. Did a big journey, not an easy one.
So you shared with us your experience in Venezuela, you mentioned New Mexico and Texas. What other countries, other than those that I just mentioned, the United States, Southern, would you say the crypto Jews are coming into?
Oh, okay, so anywhere that was the Spanish and Portuguese Empire. So you have the Canary Islands, well, you know, it's still part of Spain, but you have Brazil. Brazil has a huge population. I mean, Chile. You have also in Europe, you have Italy, you have all of Sicily. I have a friend in Sicily who, she's the first rabbi there in 500 years. Her name is Rabbi Barbara Aiello. She's from Sicily, and she's from a family like that. And she told, you know, you had in Germany, you had Turkey. Well, Turkey, absolutely. Yes, Turkey had a huge Sephardic. That was before the Holocaust. And Greece, they both did. but most of them were decimated. I mean, in Turkey it was a disaster.
Where would you say the strongest community is
South.
currently?
So descendants, I would say Latin America, who had so many, because they went all the way to the Philippines. I mean, you had everywhere that their empire reached. You had Africa.
Yeah.
I have people sometimes who write to me from Africa. They're not black, by the way, but they are from the Portuguese. So, no, but I think Brazil, Mexico has huge, a lot of people.
There are still Jews in Persia. Most of them
Yes.
left, but I had friends who came from there.
No, I was just in the Israeli consulate in New York renewing my passport, and next to me was a family who had just gotten out 2 years before, and I was helping them because their English was, and I was looking at those parents, I could see they really went through something. Besides, my daughter-in-law's parents, who are Babylonian Jews, left Baghdad for the safety of Tehran, and then had to leave there in '78, so they speak it fluently, and more importantly, she can cook the food, but yes, they've told me a lot about that, yes.
Well, we want
Where
to,
do you live now?
Philadelphia.
Oh, you do?
yeah, thank you for coming.
That's her first time.
You guys, if you want to look at her book, we have a copy here as
Oh, you can
well.
look at